The history of the atom. At the start of the 19th century, John Dalton described atoms as solid spheres. He said that different spheres made up the different elements. In 1897, J.J. Thomson concluded from his experiments that atoms were not solid spheres. His measurements of charge and mass showed that an atom must contain even smaller, negatively charged particles, called electrons. The solid sphere idea of atomic structure had to then be changed, and the new theory was created called the plum pudding model. In 1909, Ernest Rutherford and his student Ernest Marsden conducted the very known alpha particle scattering experiments. They fired positively charged alpha particles at an incredibly thin sheet of gold. From the plum pudding model, they were anticipating that the particles would pass straight through the sheet or be spread out through the pudding atom. However, whilst most of the particles did go straight through the gold sheet, some were deflected, more than expected. A small number of particles were even deflected backwards. So they came to the conclusion that the plum pudding model couldn't be right. Rutherford came up with an idea to explain this newfound evidence, the nuclear model of the atom. In this model, there is a tiny, positively charged nucleus at the center of the atom, where the most mass is concentrated. A cloud of negative electrons surrounds this nucleus, and so most of the atom is empty space. When alpha particles came near the concentrated, positive charge of the nucleus, they were deflected, and if they were fired directly at the nucleus, they were then deflected backwards. Otherwise, they would just pass through the empty space. Scientists then realized that electrons in a cloud around the nucleus of an atom, as Rutherford had described, would be attracted to the nucleus, which would cause the atom to collapse. Niels Bohr's nucleus model of the atom suggested that all the electrons were contained in shells. Bohr proposed that electrons orbit the nucleus in fixed shells and are not anywhere in between. Each shell has a fixed distance from the nucleus. Bohr's theory of atomic structure was supported by many experiments, and it supported other scientists' observations at that time. Further experiments by Rutherford and others showed that the nucleus can be divided into smaller particles, which each have the same charge as a hydrogen nucleus, and these particles were then named protons. About 20 years after scientists had accepted that atoms have nuclei, James Chadwick carried out an experiment which showed evidence for neutral particles in the nucleus, and these are now called neutrons. The discovery of the neutrons has resulted in a model of the atom which was very similar to the modern-day version, which is called the nuclear model.